My best friend's wedding was a setup to expose her cheating fiancé, and what happened next shocked us all. When I agreed to be my best friend's maid of honor, I never expected to be the one uncovering the darkest secret of her life. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but little did she know, it was all a setup to expose her fiancé's infidelity. And when the truth came out, it was far worse than any of us could have imagined. When my best friend Lucy asked me to be her maid of honor, I was over the moon. We'd been through thick and thin together, and now her big day was finally here. She had everything planned down to the smallest detail. Her dream wedding was just days away, and the excitement was palpable. But as much as I wanted to celebrate with her, something about her fiancé, Mark, always felt off. I had been friends with Mark for a couple of years, and on the surface he seemed perfect, charming, caring, successful. But every time I spent time with him, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I knew I wasn't the only one who noticed the subtle tension between them, and my instincts kept telling me that something was off. But Lucy was in love, and she was convinced Mark was the one. As the wedding approached, I thought I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something I wasn't seeing. The day before the wedding, Lucy asked me to help her with last-minute arrangements. We were at the venue going through the schedule when she stepped out to speak with the florist. I was alone in the bridal suite when my phone buzzed. It was an anonymous message, one that I almost ignored, until the photo attached made my heart drop. The picture was of Mark, taken in a dimly lit bar, laughing and holding hands with another woman. I zoomed in, trying to convince myself it wasn't what it seemed, but the expression on his face was clear. He was too comfortable, too affectionate. It wasn't a one-time mistake or a harmless flirtation. He was cheating. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. My first instinct was to tell Lucy immediately, but then another thought hit me. What if this wasn't the right time? What if she found out in the worst possible way, on her wedding day? It had been hours since I'd received the anonymous message with the photo of Mark and the woman at the bar. I couldn't stop staring at the image, the unease growing in my chest. The more I examined it, the more it became clear that this wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't just a flirty moment captured in a photo. This was evidence of something deeper, something far more damaging. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was overthinking it. But deep down, I knew the truth. I'd seen enough to know that something was off. And now that I had this information, I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't just keep it to myself and let Lucy walk down the aisle tomorrow without knowing. I needed more than a photo. I needed more than just one moment in time. I needed a clear picture of what was happening between Mark and this woman. But how could I get that without making it all blow up before the wedding? My mind raced with possibilities, trying to figure out a way to expose Mark's secret without ruining everything for Lucy. I knew I couldn't just walk up to her and show her the photo now. She'd never forgive me. The timing had to be perfect. I needed evidence, something irrefutable that would make her believe me, without a shadow of a doubt. And then, it hit me. The wedding was tomorrow. Everything was set. There was no way Mark could back out now. No way he could hide behind his charming smile for much longer. The wedding would be the perfect stage for the truth to come to light. But how could I expose him without causing chaos? I texted one of the bridesmaids, asking if she could meet me in private later that evening. I knew that if anyone could help me, it was her. She'd always been the one to keep things together in tough situations. When she agreed to meet, I knew it was time to start putting my plan into motion. As the evening grew darker, I met with Carla, one of Lucy's bridesmaids, in a quiet corner of the venue. She could tell something was off immediately. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, her voice full of concern. "I wish I had," I replied with a dry laugh, though I wasn't laughing inside. I explained what I had discovered, showing her the photo of Mark and the woman at the bar. I didn't leave out any details, and by the time I was finished, Carla was just as shocked as I was. "I knew something was off about him," Carla admitted, her voice low. "But I never thought he'd do something like this. I thought it was just my gut feeling. You think she doesn't know?" "I don't know," I said, feeling my stomach churn. "But I'm not sure I can wait for her to find out on her own. If she marries him tomorrow and doesn't know about this—" Carla frowned, her eyes dark with concern. "This could destroy her. You're sure you want to do this now?" I paused, feeling the weight of the decision hanging over me. I can't let her marry him without knowing what I know. She deserves to know the truth. Carla nodded, her lips tight with the same determination I felt. So, what's the plan? I had no solid plan. There wasn't a right way to expose someone like Mark, especially when it could ruin everything. But I knew one thing for sure. I needed more proof. One photo, no matter how damning, wouldn't be enough. I needed something that would hit him where it hurt, something that would make him confess. We agreed that we would take advantage of the rehearsal dinner that night. Mark would be busy socializing, and with all the family and friends around, there was no better time to get close and investigate further. I had a few suspicions about where Mark had been when the photo was taken, and I had a feeling he might slip up if I could just get him talking. Carla and I had planned to be subtle, but our goal was clear. Find out if Mark was still seeing this woman, and if so, how long it had been going on. That night, the truth had to come out. The rehearsal dinner was a whirlwind of laughter, clinking glasses, and the sound of music playing softly in the background. But behind the light-hearted atmosphere, my mind was focused entirely on Mark. I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be the moment I found the proof I needed. Lucy, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing, was making the rounds, thanking people for coming and laughing with family members. She looked radiant, almost too happy. It was heartbreaking to think about what was about to come crashing down. I walked through the crowd, trying to remain calm, keeping a close eye on Mark. He was deep in conversation with a group of his friends, but his eyes kept flicking toward the woman he'd been caught with in the photo. She wasn't there, but I noticed the way he glanced around, checking to see if anyone was watching him. It was subtle, but it was a tell I couldn't ignore. Carla, who had been keeping watch from across the room, signaled to me. I made my way toward her, trying to look casual, but my heart was beating faster than I'd like to admit. She met me at the corner of the room, her expression tense. "He just got a text," Carla whispered. He looked at his phone and immediately shoved it into his pocket like he didn't want anyone to see. "It's definitely her. I'm sure of it." I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. We were so close to the truth. I couldn't back out now. "I need to talk to him," I said, my voice steady but my mind racing. "I'll confront him." Carla's face turned pale. "Are you sure about this? He could be dangerous if he feels cornered." I hesitated for only a second. "I can't just let Lucy marry him without knowing the truth. We've come this far. I have to do this for her." With a deep breath, I walked toward Mark. He was standing by the bar now, talking to a few guests. I had the feeling he was waiting for the woman to arrive. The nerves in my stomach twisted as I approached him. "Mark," I said, trying to sound casual, "can we talk for a second?" He turned to me, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Of course, what's up?" I looked him in the eye, trying to read him. "I need to ask you something about the photo that's been circulating around. The one with you and that woman at the bar." His smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained composure. "What about it? That's old news?" I could feel the tension rising in my chest. "Is it? Because I don't think it's old news. In fact, I think it's something Lucy should know before tomorrow." Mark's expression shifted instantly from confident to defensive. The smile that had been plastered on his face moments ago faded as he tried to steady himself. For a brief second, I could see the cracks in his facade. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice sharp now. "That photo was a mistake, and it doesn't mean anything. You've got it all wrong." I took a step closer, trying to stay calm, but my heart was racing. "A mistake? How is that a mistake?" You were holding her hand, laughing with her. "It looks a lot more than just some mistake, Mark." He glanced around nervously, lowering his voice. "We were just friends. It was nothing. This is ridiculous. You're blowing things way out of proportion." I leaned in, keeping my voice low but firm. "What about the texts you've been getting tonight? You were looking at your phone, Mark. Don't think I didn't see that. She's still in your life, isn't she? You've been hiding this from Lucy for months." He shook his head, his face reddening. "I don't know what you think you're trying to do, but you're crossing a line. If you want to ruin everything, go ahead, but don't do it to Lucy. She doesn't deserve any of this." The anger and fear in his eyes were palpable. It was clear now that he was trying to avoid the truth, trying to dismiss what I knew in hopes of keeping his secrets buried. "Don't try to guilt me into silence," I snapped back, not backing down. "You think I'm trying to ruin Lucy's life? No, I'm trying to protect her from a man who doesn't deserve her. You've been cheating on her, and you think you can just walk away from it? Not this time." Mark stepped back, looking around to make sure no one was listening. He lowered his voice, almost pleading. Please, I'm begging you. Don't say anything to her. I'll talk to her later, okay? We can fix this. I'll explain everything, and you can forget this ever happened. I shook my head, disgusted by his words. You think it'll just go away if you talk to her? That's not how this works, Mark. You don't get to apologize and think everything's fine. Just as I was about to press him further, I heard the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking on the floor. I turned, and there she was, Lucy, standing at the entrance of the room. Her eyes locked onto mine and then shifted to Mark, the confusion and concern written all over her face. Lucy stood there, frozen at the door, her eyes darting between Mark and me, trying to process what she had just walked in on. The air was thick with tension. For a few long moments, no one spoke. Mark, realizing that Lucy had caught the tail end of the conversation, turned pale. His confident demeanor evaporated, replaced by a nervous fidgeting of his hands. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. I could feel the weight of everything hanging in the balance. Lucy finally broke the silence. What's going on? Her voice trembled slightly, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Why are you two acting so weird? I stepped toward her slowly, the pain in my chest like a knot that was too tight to untangle. Lucy, I started, my voice soft but firm. There's something you need to see, something you need to know about Mark. Mark opened his mouth to protest, but Lucy cut him off, her eyes narrowing. Mark, what's happening? Her voice was now sharp, demanding an explanation. I took a deep breath. I found something, and I didn't know what to do with it, but now I can't keep it from you any longer. I handed her my phone, the photo of Mark with the other woman on the screen. For a moment, Lucy stared at the photo in silence, her face unreadable. I could see the shock on her face, but she didn't react right away. Then slowly she lifted her eyes to meet Mark's, and the mask of confusion slipped away, replaced by something darker, betrayal. Mark, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is this? Mark opened his mouth again, but he was too slow. The words didn't come. The truth had already sunk in, and the damage was done. Lucy, Mark began, but she cut him off. Don't, she said, her voice stronger now, though still shaking. Don't say anything. I can't hear your lies right now. Lucy's gaze turned back to me, the hurt in her eyes so raw that it made me want to take everything back. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't you warn me? I'm sorry, I whispered, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I didn't want to ruin your day. I thought maybe it would be better if you didn't find out. Her face softened slightly, but her pain was still so evident. You were right to tell me. I don't know why I didn't see it. All the signs were there. Mark finally found his voice, and his words came out in a rush, full of desperation. Lucy, please, I messed up, okay? But I swear I love you. This was a mistake. It doesn't mean anything. Please, just give me a chance to explain. But Lucy wasn't listening. She turned to face him, her expression hardening. Number, I can't do this. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me enough to be honest. You've been lying to me, and I can't. Her voice broke, but she took a deep breath, standing tall. I'm done. Lucy stood there, tears brimming in her eyes, but her face was resolute. I could see the hurt, the disbelief, but also a quiet strength. She had made her decision. Mark, on the other hand, looked shattered, his face pale as he tried to collect himself. He stepped toward her, but Lucy raised a hand to stop him. Don't come near me, she said softly, her voice steady. You've lost me, Mark. I can't look at you the same way anymore. Mark stood frozen for a moment, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for something to say. His eyes were filled with desperation, but Lucy didn't flinch. I loved you, she said, her voice breaking just a little. And you threw that away for what? A lie? A betrayal? I can't even begin to process this. The silence that followed was suffocating. I watched as Mark struggled to find the words, but the damage was done. Lucy had already made up her mind. The trust was shattered, and no amount of pleading could fix it. I stepped forward, my heart aching for my best friend. Lucy, are you okay? I asked quietly, not wanting to add to the tension, but knowing she needed support. She nodded, wiping away a tear that escaped. I'm okay, I don't know what to do with all of this. Mark finally spoke again, his voice low and full of regret. I didn't mean for this to happen, Lucy. Please, I'll do anything. Let me explain. Let me make it right. Lucy shook her head, a sad smile on her lips. There's nothing you can say to make it right, Mark. You had your chance. At that moment, Lucy turned her back to him, her decision final. I can't marry you. I can't spend my life with someone who doesn't value me the way I deserve to be valued. I could see the pain in her eyes, but there was also a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but instead, it had become the day she reclaimed her power. Mark stood there in stunned silence, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Lucy, please. His voice cracked, but it was too late. She was already walking away. The wedding was officially called off, and the news spread quickly. Lucy's friends and family were shocked, but Lucy knew it was the only way forward. She didn't need anyone's approval. She needed to protect herself from further heartbreak. The day after the wedding, I stayed with her. The house was eerily quiet. The decorations, the flowers, the cake, everything was still in place, as if the wedding was just waiting to happen. But for Lucy, it was all a reminder of what had been stolen from her. A dream turned into a nightmare. I watched as she packed up her things, sorting through the chaos with a sense of finality. I never saw it coming, she said quietly, wiping a stray tear from her cheek. I thought he was my forever. I thought he loved me. I hugged her tightly, not knowing what to say, but knowing she needed me now more than ever. The tears were inevitable. The betrayal was raw, and I could see how much it hurt her. But even through the tears, there was a spark in her eyes, a glimmer of determination. She wasn't going to let this define her. She was going to rise above it. Later that day, Lucy took a walk to clear her head, and I went with her. We didn't talk much at first. Sometimes silence says more than words. But as we walked through the park, I saw a shift in her. The weight of the past few days was still there, but I could tell she was starting to breathe again. I don't want to let him control me anymore, Lucy said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. I've spent so much time thinking about him, about what he did, that I forgot to think about myself. You're so strong, Lucy, I said, smiling at her. You don't need him. You've got so much to offer, and this is just one chapter of your life. She looked up at me, her face softening. I know. I'm done with being anyone's second choice. I deserve better. Later, when we got back to her place, Lucy took a deep breath and made a decision. I'm going to take a break from everything, get away for a while. I need to focus on myself, on what makes me happy. No distractions. I couldn't have been more proud of her. The strength she showed in this moment was more than I had ever expected. Lucy was going to be okay. She was already healing. It wasn't easy for Lucy to move on. There were days when she missed Mark, when the thought of what could have been made her heart ache. But as time went on, she found herself again. She rediscovered her passions, her hobbies, the things that made her feel like herself before all of this began. And through it all, she had me, her best friend who never stopped believing in her. Lucy's journey was far from over, but she was no longer trapped in the past. She was walking forward into a future she could build for herself, one where she wouldn't settle for anything less than what she deserved. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Have you ever had to face the truth about someone you loved, even when it seemed impossible? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and share in your experiences.